Greetings, warriors. Today, beside me, I have a true warrior, a former Navy SEALs who served for the country for 12 years, and a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, brown belt.
Brown belt. It's black belt for me, Mr. Chad Metcalf. Chad, thank you so much for taking the time, and welcome to my channel.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here.
So the way we're gonna do this is I have 10 questions for you, and you can take as much time as you want to answer each and go in as deep as you want. So should we start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So first one, what does it mean to be a man?
That's a good question. So I think it starts with taking responsibility, not making excuses. I think, one of the, first things, kind of easy victories. You probably read the little book I had, that, something we can all do is take out, distraction, resistance, and victimhood. So distraction is, anytime how many times have you got on your, computer to check an email or do something, you get on YouTube to try to figure out how to do something real quick. And then before you know it, you're watching freaking cat videos or something else. And you've just wasted like an hour of your time. So if you can just recognize, oh, this is a distraction, close out those tabs, like just being aware of it, you're able to shut that off. Resistance is that little voice saying, I can't do it. Right. So if you can just recognize for what that is, you can, push past that. And then victimhood, in kids, when they're playing sports, it sounds a lot like, we lost the game because the umpire made a bad call. Or for adults, like, I didn't get the job promotion because, they don't like me. So now, while some of those things could be true, it like completely takes the power away from you as a person or as a man to actually like impact your own future, right? Instead of saying, okay, we lost the game because we weren't good enough. Like we left it in the umpire's hands, right? If you're competing in jiu-jitsu, like don't leave it in the referee's decision because that could go either way, right? So it'd be more like, okay, I need to work on building my skills. I need to, at my job, I need this promotion. Like, okay, ask your role, hey, what would it take for me to get a promotion? It's the same thing like in the SEAL teams. If there was a job that I wanted, or hey, I want to get this eval or whatever, like go to your leadership and say, hey, here's where I want to be. Where do you see me now? What do I need to do to get there? So that approach, like being proactive, taking responsibility. And then I say kind of the big one all comes back to like, know why you're doing something. So, mental toughness can look, isn't just for sports, it's for life too. So if you're, working a job that you hate, but that, provides for your family, that takes like mental toughness to just go in and do that. So if you're just looking at the job like, oh, this is terrible, like I hate doing this, my life's miserable. Yeah, you're not going to be a good spot. But if you look at like, hey, this is putting, food on the table for my family, I'm helping them get a better life. I do all that, just that little mindset shift can help you be a better man, better person. So I'd say it is kind of knowing your why, working on, your mindset, and then, trying to create opportunities for, others that maybe you didn't have, or, something like that.
Exactly.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. You did. And guys, actually, Chad has more of what he just told me in his free ebook. So we're going to have all the relevant links in the description. My second question is, what is the number one thing that, in your experience, is the secret to success?
Let's see. The number one thing that is a secret for success. It's a good question. But if I had to say one thing, it's your mindset, right? Because it doesn't matter what it is you're going out to achieve, like you're going to fail. And how you respond to that failure is going to dictate, whether you push through or whether you... So I'd say, there's really only two reasons why you shouldn't be failing at something. Is either A, you aren't pushing out of your comfort zone. You're not trying new things and you're not going to experience any growth. Or two, you're the best in the world at whatever it is you're doing. So outside of those, like you should be, failing. Like that's how we learn. Like failure is the ultimate feedback, whether you're in sports or like think about, training in the gym, right? You go and roll and you're like trying this new move and you're thinking, okay, well, I didn't figure, like, it's not that the move doesn't work. You're just learning how to make it work, right? So you're going through, well, it doesn't work when you do that.
That always happened to me when I roll with him. So,
but you got to build that up, but you build it up through failure, right? And as soon as you can just recognize that, then you don't really have a fear of failure. Like there's, what people used to say, like, oh, failure isn't an option. There's no fear. Like that's all lies. Like everyone's afraid. Nobody wants to fail. And if you say failure is not an option, like failure is going to happen. It's just how you respond to it. So I'd say to be, successful is like, you have to have that in your mindset of like, I'm going to push through and make this happen. There's one caveat to that. There's I actually just wrote a book summary on this on my website, but there's a book by Seth Godin. I think that's his name, called The dip. And it's essentially a book about when you should quit, because there are times when you should quit, but it's not in a dip. A dip is like, you're going along and man, you're having a hard time figuring out whatever it is, whether you're launching a business or whatever, you're going to go through these dips and you've got to push through those to make it to where you're going. But sometimes you're not in a dip, you're in like a dead end, right? You're in a cul-de-sac or you're on a cliff. So it's like being able to recognize, okay, and maybe it's a strategy in your business or in jiu-jitsu or whatever, where you're like, you know what, I've pushed at this, I've tried, it's not working. Maybe you need to quit that strategy, right? And shift it to something else that is working.
So don't quit on your goal, but quit rather the strategy or the approach towards achieving that goal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's times where, as we get older in life, there's times where, things that we went after when we were younger, like it doesn't make sense to go after them now. Like for me, for example, when I got out of the Navy, I tried to make it on the PGA Tour for like three years, right? And I got the best coaches you could have, like had sponsors, like all this stuff. Like I left no stone unturned. But after 3 years, it was the third time I ran out of money, and it was just like the strain on my family was so much. It was like, okay, like it's, my dream is like affecting other people.
It's the wise decision to stop. And
yeah, but that doesn't mean you can't take that same mindset and apply it, somewhere else, because I looked at it, okay, even if like the last few months I was playing, I missed getting my Canadian tour card by a few shots in qualifying school. And the thing is, even if you make it on that tour, you're really not making any money, right? So until you're basically on the web.com or Corn Ferry Tour, whatever they're calling it now, you're not really making any money until you're already going to get your PGA Tour card the next year, right? Because I think if you're top 25 or so, like you're making okay money. Outside of that, like you're really playing just to break even. So, I mean, it was a hard decision, and maybe if one day if I become independently wealthy, like I'll try it again. But I don't know. Well, the jury's out on that.
Yeah, for sure. Right. My next question for you is, if you would have to recommend 3 practical things that one can implement or start doing right now in order to become more resilient, what would they be?
What are 3 things somebody could do right now to become more resilient? For me, I've found making it through, buds or playing professional golf, being in the business world, like it comes back to why you want something, right? So that's the first step, is like you have to know why you want it. So like even when I went to buds, I was 135 pounds, like never really ran very far, never swam in the ocean. And there's guys that are, way better athletes than I was. And in the back, I'm like, okay, how am I going to compete with these guys? But most of those guys ended up quitting. So, why that is, like, I've got some guesses on it, but I think they didn't want it bad enough, right? So I didn't want to be wet and cold and tired and all this. Like, I wanted what was on the other side of it. So I think the first thing is, if you want something bad enough, like you'll be willing to like do what it takes to get it. Like you'll be willing to suffer for a time to get the result you want. So that's the first thing, is like know your why. The second thing is like we need small wins to keep us going. Like if we lose our motivation to do something, like we're not going to do it. So how do you get small wins? First is like you honestly assess yourself, right? So you figure, okay, here's where I want to go. Kind of here's the skills that I would need to be able to do that. And here's the skills I have now, right? So that's kind of your self-assessment, right? So that's step 2. Step 3 is you make a systematic plan to get those skills. So you take the easiest skill first and you get that one. And if you're having trouble accomplishing that, you break it down to even a smaller step on that skill, right? And then you get that one. And each time you accomplish one of those little micro goals, like you start believing in yourself more. You're like, oh, wow, I see this starting to work. Like, so you start building confidence, right? So that would be the third one. So build like a systematic approach to building those skills, the same way you would do in jiu-jitsu. If you're going to go learn how to body lock past somebody, like you just have to accept the fact that you're going to get swept, you're going to get guillotined. All these things are going to happen to you in the process of learning how to do this. But the first thing you got to do is just learn how to lock your hands around. If you can learn how to off balance them and lock your hands, like, okay, that's step 1. Then you figure out, okay, I can do that every time. Don't even worry about what happens. Like, now work on the next step, right? And before you know it, like you're body locking everybody.
Yes.
Right. So it'd be the same thing in business or whatever. Pick that little skill and just start stacking them. Right. I think a lot of people, I've heard it said, they overestimate what they can do in, a short period of time, say 1 year, and they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. So if you just go out the mindset of like, I'm going to get 1% better today, like anybody could get 1% 1% better at something. You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
So if you did that every day though, like that's like discipline, consistency, and you're just stacking these wins, your confidence is growing, you're strengthening your why. And that's really how you build resilience.
That's also similar to what you were saying at Sony website. You were saying that in order to go through the buds and to make it through the Hell Week, you had this mindset of just make it to the next role.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
For sure. I mean, there was, and there's a great video on like buds. I think it's on YouTube. It was a Discovery Channel series they did on buds class 2, 3, 4. And I was in 250 and 251. So that had came out before I went to buds, but I had never seen it. Right. And I think sometimes not knowing what's ahead could be a good thing. Right? Like ignorance is bliss. Like you just want to I think like it's even in business, like you want to have like an idea of like, here's where I'm going. But sometimes like knowing all the steps that it takes to get there can be overwhelming. So, I mean, it's fine if you know them, but you still got to like dial it back and focus on the one you're doing right now and not get overwhelmed by everything else.
Exactly.
Right. So with like Hell Week, for example, like, I mean, you could look up the stats, but you paddle something like 200 miles, you run 200 miles, you swim a freaking really long way, you carry logs a really long way, you stay up for like a week straight, right? And like mentally, it's like, how would you even wrap your mind around that? If you're like, oh my God, I have to run 200 miles, like that is ridiculous.
Even the fact that you're not sleeping, like you're sleeping a few hours.
Like you couldn't do that. But I guarantee you, every person, is more capable than they think they are. And it's also like, if you pick a rock 10 feet in front of you, it doesn't matter how tired you are, like you could crawl to that rock, right? I mean, anyone could do that. So I just did that for 6 days, right? I was like, I'm not worried about all that. I'll just make it to there. And you can even be really bad. You're like, you know what? Let me just make it to there and then I'll quit. And then you get there and you go, you know what? Let me just make it to there and then I'll quit, right?
Exactly.
Like that could be the same thing you do in business. Like, okay, let me just see if I can sell to one customer and then we'll see, okay, I did that. Okay, let me just try to sell to one more, right? So that's kind of that was my mindset on that.
Exactly. All right, Chad, up to number 4, 3 practical things that someone can start doing to become physically stronger if they are out of shape or they have a busy schedule, maybe 3 types of exercises that are more complete. Because obviously you are 40 and you are in better shape than I am. And
oh, thank you. I mean, I think it first comes back to like you actually have to want to be healthier. Like you have to know your why. Yeah. Right. You're like, okay, I want to not health problems. I want to be able to, play sports with my kids. I want to be able to, do these different things. I mean, take like my own kids, for example, like they all train jiu-jitsu. You've rolled with some of them. Yeah. Like my oldest, like the kid's a freaking beast on the mat. Yes. And imagine like if I didn't train and he was at his level right now, like he'd be able to thump me. Like no doubt. I mean, have you seen him in there with guys that are 220 pounds, all, 6'4" and Maverick thumps them, right? 17-year-old kid. So like part of my why is like, okay, I want to be able to like train with my kids and beat them as long as I can, right? Now I'm teaching them exactly what to do. Yeah. So it becomes harder and harder to beat them. And I know when they beat me, like freaking good for them. Like, but I'm not going to make it easy. Yeah. And then just recently, like I had knee surgery in July. Like, I mean, I couldn't really, like before my knee surgery, like I couldn't really, there was time, like in the mornings, like Christy would have to help me get to the bathroom because I couldn't, my knee was locking out like 6 times a week. And then I had the surgery and had complete loss of mobility in my knee. I mean, I could move it, maybe like an inch, right? So I did all the rehab, started, studying different things, found this guy, Ben Patrick. He was on the Rogan podcast and he had this knees over toes program. So I'd say if you are somebody who's like really out of shape, a little bit older, like, middle age, I would start there, right? Start with the knees over toes program. I think you can buy he's got little books you can buy with the program or the app. I think it's like $50 a month. But you can knock out these workouts in about 30 minutes, right? Start with the Zero program, right? Because there's one thing when people go to like start working out that have never worked out before. Yeah. They try to do it all in one day. Yeah. Right. And it's not about like, oh, I went and just completely crushed myself today and now I can't even function the rest of the week. It's about like, okay, what can I do every day? Right. So if you can go out and go, okay, I can put in this 30 minutes every day. And then once that's hard, like once that Zero program is easier, then move to the next program. So it's the same thing as building our other skills, like start with that crawl, walk, run progression and start building those skills. And once you've done that for a while, like you're going to get in better shape. And like a lot of that is, mobility based, like rehab stuff. So like your joints, you're going to start like strengthening your joints, your ligaments. Like you're going to have like right now I have less knee pain than I've had in the last 5 years.
That's amazing.
Like after the surgery, I've had like ripped my MCL in half on this one before, tore this meniscus. I never got it fixed. This one, I ripped it so bad that I had to get surgery. But I mean, I've thrown everything at it, like PRP, peptides, all that stuff. So that's kind of the first two things, right? So A, know your why. B, start with an easy program. And build from there, right? I'm not saying it's not going to be easy for you if you've never done it, but do that one. And once that becomes easy, start elevating it up. Your third is nutrition, right? If you drink 6 beers a night, your exercise output is going to have to counteract that to get any gains. So I mean, even stuff like drinking a giant Gatorade, if you're trying to burn calories and you're sitting there on the little bike and barely going, and you're drinking a 400 calorie drink, but you only burn 200 calories, you literally got fatter while you worked out. Right? So you got to be mindful of that. Now for me, I have the opposite problem because, right now I'm working on finishing my books. But when I'm not doing that, I train jiu-jitsu 12 sessions a week and work out 3 to 5 days a week on top of that. So I'm at a caloric deficit, right? Because Fernando tracked it. I think we were burning 1,000 calories per jiu-jitsu. So I'm burning 3,000 calories a day, or something like 1,000. Wow. It depends on how hard your rounds are.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But if I'm burning 3,000 calories a day just in exercising, that's a lot of fuel. So I would say the answer is a lot of people well, I just won't eat. Well, no, you've got to fuel yourself so you can go back and do it. You just got to kind of be mindful of your, how many are you burning? How many are you putting in? But you have to fuel yourself, and it needs to be with the right stuff. The other thing you can do is get your, which I've done the ways to well stuff, got my blood work done, and okay, what vitamins am I short in? And then kind of just doing that to optimize your nutrition. So starts with your why, get you a decent program that's, not overwhelming for you, something you can stick, and then, get your health and nutrition freaking optimized for that. You see a lot of people in the gym, the first 2 weeks of the year, right? Everyone's I've got my New Year's resolution is to get fit this year, and I'm going to go to the gym. And I normally try to take the first 2 weeks off at Gold's because it's too crowded. I'm I'll just work out at home. But I don't do New Year's resolution. I think they're stupid. If it's your only thing, then yeah, sure, do it. But I'd say most people do not follow through with it. If you actually want to do it, start today.
Exactly.
Right.
It's maybe because they don't have a strong enough why.
Yeah.
Right. So your resolution usually lasts for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Which I don't even like working out.
Yeah.
I do it because I like jiu-jitsu, and it helps me. I like crushing
jiu-jitsu.
people in jiu-jitsu, right? In a nice way, right?
Exactly.
But if you could be,
can it be in a nice way?
Yeah, it can be. I had one guy told me so he introduced me. He's oh yeah, this is Chad. He will definitely crush you, but he'll do it in the nicest way. But going to John's place, I get crushed plenty. So.
Yeah. Haven't seen that though.
Oh yeah,
haven't seen that.
It happens.
What is your number one tip for making money?
Number one tip for making money? That's easy. Start with a lot of money. No, I'm kidding. Number one tip for making money is start with a good opportunity. So I went to Acton School of Business, which is a MBA program on entrepreneurship that's taught by actual successful entrepreneur. So the guy that started it, his name is Jeff Sandifer. He was teaching at the UT Business School. And he's a, self-made entrepreneur. I mean, I don't know how much money he's worth, but it's probably billions. But he had an idea at UT. He was hey, instead of having tenured professors teach, let's get actual entrepreneurs with real-world experience to teach this class, right? So they're not just teaching some theory from a book. They're teaching, hey, this is what really works. And they were no, we're not going to do that. So he was well, I'll just start my own school. So he did. He started his own school. And then after that, he started a K through 12 program that's based on the same methods, which is all Socratic method, meaning none of the teachers are going to answer your questions, right? They're going to guide you. They're going to ask you Socratic questions that point you in the direction, but you actually have to go out and figure it out for yourself, right? Much like in real life.
Yeah.
Right? I think in school, and that's how their K through 12 program is. So if you look at kind of traditional school, what are we doing? We're basically learning to know, right? So that is the lowest form of learning, especially now that we have cell phones where we have all the information of the world in our hand. Just memorizing useless facts, it's okay, but it's
won't help much.
It's not going to help you much.
Yeah.
And then being able to regurgitate those facts and go, oh, good job, you got an A, you're going to be successful. Well, maybe not. Oftentimes it's all the A students that are working for the C students, right? Have you found this to be true?
Yeah.
So
that's really true.
There's actually two better ways to learn. There's learning to learn, which is a great skill. It's probably, if there's anything that I'm a master of, it is learning, right? So learning how to learn is key, because if you can learn how to learn, you can learn anything.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the next thing that they teach is learning to be. community. That's like, how do you learn how to like, work in a community, get along with people? Like, what are your social skills, right? So those last two things are pretty important for business, right? Because you're going to have to learn how to learn the things you don't know. And then you're going to have to learn how to like interact with people to make stuff happen.
I see.
So back to like, what's the number one tip for making money is starting with a good opportunity. I think there's a good book people could read. We read in business school. It's called the E-Myth, and that stands for the entrepreneur myth. And that is the myth that small business owners in America are entrepreneurs, when in fact, most of them are not. They don't own a company. They simply own a job, right? And the reason for this is they go in thinking of themselves and not the customer, right? So for an example, it's like, hey, I'm good at baking cookies. I'm going to open a bakery. Right now, I go open this bakery and my whole focus is on making the best cookie and all that. And that is important. Like, you have to have a good product. But if I never even did any research on like, well, what kind of cookies sell? Like, do people in this area even buy cookies?
Exactly.
Right? Like, I'm setting myself up for failure. Now, I'm not saying a bakery is a good business or a bad business, but you would have to do customer research. So with the opportunity analysis thing, it essentially comes down to intensity of customer need, right? The more intense the customer need is, the better the opportunity. And it also comes down to like the money aspects of it, like down at the unit level. So if, something costs me $1 to make it and I can sell it for $3, like, is that good or bad?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it depends on that customer need. Like, how many customers can I get? Is it easy to find? Are they easy to find? Do I have to educate them about why this is a solution to their problem? Right. So there's other stuff to go into. I think I actually have a little book on Amazon that I wrote. It's a short book. It's like 5,000 words. That's I think it's called From Idea to Reality, a Pocket Guide to Entrepreneurship, something like that.
We can link that one.
But
as well.
That one, and initially, like, it was, I'm working on this book now, and part of the, I've got a coach who's like, I don't know anything about writing books and the whole process. So the first thing was like, okay, we'll just go write a book. What? Write it about something you know about. Yeah. So I sat down and just kind of answered this question of like, what is this opportunity and analysis? What does it look like? And put that out there. And so that was kind of why I wrote that.
Exactly.
But I kind of go into that and I break down some of the math behind analyzing an opportunity. So with that skill right there, I mean, for example, there's a little store around the road they opened up where they're selling tea, right? It's like, think of it like Starbucks, but they're selling tea instead of coffee. And, went in there to check it out because they sent out, like, everyone got a free tea. Like, just download the app and you can get a free tea. So I'm like, why? It's like, oh, let's go. I'm like, okay, fine, let's go check. So we're on the drive back. My youngest rider, he just won the children's business fair at his school. And this little dude, like, he sold birdhouses.
Yeah.
And I told him, like, okay, I'll help you make the first one, but this isn't dad's business fair. This is a children's business fair. So you got to do the work. Yeah. Like, I'll help you if you have questions, but this is your deal. So he's like, first he's like nervous. And then after like an hour, he's like, okay, Dad, I got it figured out. Here's how we do it. Little dude made like $400 selling these birdhouses. Really? He had like some left over and he went door to door and sold them. So he's like starting to understand. He's like, okay, it cost me this much to make them. I can sell it for this. And it takes me 18 minutes to make one. He's like, all right, I think I can make this much money. I'm like, and the kid's 9 years old. I'm like, all right, that's freaking brilliant. So on the ride home from this tea place, I asked him, like, Ryder, you think that's a good business? He's like, yeah, it's like really nice in there. I'm like, okay, well, let's just make some assumptions. And before we get home, let's figure out if this is a good business or a bad business. Yeah. So like, what do you think it costs to rent this building? He's like, I don't know. I said, me neither. Let's just guess. $10,000 a month. I'm like, sounds about right. So, okay, $10,000 a month. Okay, how many employees do they have? Like, when you were in there and we were in there just now, how many employees did they have? He's like, oh, they had like 5. Okay, so it's 5 people working. How much do you think they get paid? He's like, I don't know, $15, $17 an hour. I'm like, okay, and then they've got a match, so let's just call it $20 an hour. So they got 5. That's $100 an hour that they're paying in labor, right? So okay, we've got that. Now, how many hours do they open a day? Let's say 10. So there's $1,000 a day in labor. So now we're at $30,000 a month in labor, $10,000 in rent, and then whatever there's other expenses, right? But let's just say $40,000 a month. And let's look at, like, what do they sell? They're selling tea for $4 a cup, right? Now, what's it cost them to make that one tea? I mean, I have no idea, right? They're making a whole pitcher of tea. So let's just say their unit cost is 0 and they're making $4 a cup. We know that's not true, but just to figure figure it out. They've got $30,000 just to make the easy math. Let's say they're making $3 a cup, right? Because there's different sizes. Some are like $2, some are $4. So let's just say they make $3 per one they sell. So how many cups of tea do they have to sell just to break even?
40,000 divided by 3. It's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, I think I did the math like
13.
Y'all watching, you go do the math, but it was something like they needed 3 people a minute to come in.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
So is that a good business or a bad business? I guess we'll see. Like my assumptions could be wrong, but whenever you just break things down like that, because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to go, start a business, and they start with a bad opportunity. Even if you execute and you do all these things, your chance of success is very small.
Yeah.
If you can start with a great opportunity, meaning you have, who the customer is, you can easily find them, they're willing to pay for your product, and you have good unit economics, like you really don't even have to execute that well for it to be good. If you execute it well, like you're freaking knocking it out of the park, like other businesses that are like that, right? So start with a good opportunity.
In regards to what you said about market research, Alex Hormozi said in his book, maybe you know the book, $100 Million Offers. He said that he had a friend and they had a similar conversation, and he asked his friend at some point, I think this is what the story is. He asked his friend, so if me and you would have a food court and you could choose one factor that differentiates you from me, what would it be? Or I guess there's multiple people giving answers. Some of them would say, want to have the best buns or the best location or whatever. And then he goes on to say, well, I just want a hungry audience.
Yeah.
They're hungry. So I'm going to be there. So I'm going to teach you all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. You got to have the customer first. And then, right. And then it's like, what is a good customer? Right. And I think a lot of that comes into like when you price initially. Right. And I think most people go in falsely and they price too low in the beginning because they don't feel that their product is valuable. You could price low. If you price low, like you've got to sell to more, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Exactly.
If you price higher, you need less sales to hit break even, right? It could help you with some scale stuff. So you either need to price low or high, right? What you don't want to do is price in the middle.
Exactly.
Right? If you price in the middle, then the people who would just buy the low stuff aren't going to buy your product. The people who are going to buy the high aren't going to buy your product. And then the people who do buy it, they're getting the middle stuff, but they want the high-end stuff. Like for example, my mom owned a wedding venue, and I'd had like my mom's, very smart woman, accountant, business owner, like she built a decent business, but she always kind of had like with the pricing stuff. I told her, I said, man, you're not charging me. You got to charge me. She's like, it's funny you said that. I actually had a lady come in and she wanted to pay her like 4 times what my mom charged. And she's like, well, you don't even need to spend that. We can do that. But this was like that. This woman was like uber successful. And that was her way of showing that she cared about her daughter, right? Is by spending all this money on the wedding. Right. And she lost the deal because she's like, well, I can't spend that much money here. Like, I'll just go somewhere else where I can. Yeah. Right. So it is a very interesting thing.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you invest your money in?
I mean, I've invested in different things over the years. One of them was silver. And this was back, I don't know, it would have been like 2008 or 9, something like that. Do you remember when silver went on a big run? It went up to like $49. And
I was child back then. Yeah.
But there was this guy, I can't remember, but his name was like Max something, and he had this idea of like to do this 1,000,000 ounce march, and he wanted like 1,000,000 people to go buy 1 ounce of physical silver, right? So what had happened was, I guess JP Morgan was, had essentially or hypothetically, sometime I don't know all the details, but they had more paper silver than silver was that actually existed. Yes. Right. So there was just mismatch in like paper silver, and by paper silver I mean like the stock like SLV. So you could buy shares of SLV, which is supposed to like represent silver, and like,
but they're actually not backed up by silver.
They're actually not backed, but it's supposed to be like correlated to it. So that was causing like the price of physical silver to drive, and then that the paper silver was like following it. So I had re-enlisted like a year or two prior to this, and I had a buddy of mine who was another SEAL, a guy who was like super smart dude. Like his dad was a constitutional lawyer, and I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. And I'm like, Tom, like you seem like you know what you're talking about. Like you know more than I do. Like I just re-enlisted. I got all this money. Like what should I freaking invest in? He's like, oh, just go buy some silver. Like on where? He's like, no, go buy like silver eagles and put them in your safe. And I was like, where do I get it? And he's like, well, you get it here. I'm like, okay, like that's legit. He's like, oh yeah, that's legit. Okay, so freaking wired some people some money. They freaking mailed me some silver, put it there, and I just forgot about it, right? And then he's like, hey, did you see silver's moving? I was like, no. And this dude had bought like some absurd amount of silver at like $1 an ounce.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it was like, he bought a bunch more, like $4 an ounce. So it's at like, I bought it like $12 an ounce, something like that. And it's like $19 an ounce. So I'm like, huh.
Wow.
That's interesting. He's like, and he tells me, he's like, hey, Chad, you see this silver markets? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you bought all that silver, right? I was like, oh yeah, I did buy that silver. Completely forgot about it. He's like, oh, did you see how much it moved? He's like, yeah, I'm a millionaire now. I was like, oh, nice, dude. Congrats. He's like, yeah, I might sell some and go buy this property. I'm like, oh, okay. So I start thinking like, man, I need to buy more silver. So again, back to the learning thing, right? I started like just researching it. Like, okay, I knew I didn't have that much money. You know, maybe like I could have spared $1,000 every few months to like buy some silver. But if I just took the $1,000 and bought the silver, then I just have that, you know, physical silver.
Yeah.
Like I can't.
That wouldn't produce anything. Yeah.
So I started looking at call options, right? And I freaking went deep down that rabbit hole and like researched it. And, you know, long story short, in like 2 months, I turned $1,000 into $60,000. Trading
2 months
silver options. So what I do, I'd like buy $1,000 worth of call options. They would hit like, this is ridiculous. This was like printing money. They would hit like double by lunch.
That's insane.
Then I would just like sell half, and then I'd go buy physical silver with that, and I'd let the other one ride up, and then like sell it the next day, and then I buy another one, and I just kept repeating it. So I definitely.
What was that? Which year?
I was like 08, 09, something like that, somewhere around there, maybe 10. So I made a bunch of money there. You know, I had bought a bunch of different things with the money. And then it like took a hit, and I think at the time I had like 30 grand in my account, and I had it on all these options. Like I was like, dude, if this goes up another $5, I'm going to pay my house off.
Wow.
And I lost 30 grand in
like you lost it.
in 4 hours. I was like, oh gosh, this is so terrible. So, again, that's a strategy I'll use again if it works. But again, I'm not taking money that I like need to live on.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially like that stuff is essentially like educated gambling. So I'm not going to recommend that as like the best strategy to do it, but it is educated gambling. Like, yes, you can make a ton of money, but you can also lose a ton of money fast. And I think, you know, things like day trading, all that, like, you know, I've messed around with it and tried to do it. I don't think it's a sustainable way to make money. I mean, it's not really like a scalable business model. Right now, the like biggest investments I'm making are just like in my wife's and my business, like in ourselves, like in the skills that we need to like build our own businesses. So that's what I'm spending my like investing in right now. Is just investing in my own business, in, you know, the skills that I need. And again, back to, you know, I'm a firm believer, like if you don't have the skills that you need, like you're an idiot if you don't go find somebody who has those skills and learn from them. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you go pay a coach $10,000, if that saves you a year or a few years, like you can never get your time back. You can never get your time back.
And besides that, you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
No, exactly.
It's people who already did it.
There's people that already did it who are willing to help you do it. And if, you know, $10,000 like takes you from I can't do it to, wow, I have a system that I can use that has been proven to work. And I'm not saying like all of them are equal, or you should just go randomly give people money, because it's not that. But if somebody knows what they're talking about, hey, I mean, a lot of times like they'll help you for free. If you know how to ask. Right. Like most people like, oh, I'm starting a business. Like, oh, the first thing I need to do is raise money. Like, no, the first thing you need to do is prove the concept that it works. Then you can raise money.
Exactly.
Right. And if you want to raise money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. People are like, no, I don't know. But I mean, even with the thing I'm doing now, I've had several people like, I mean, I had a guy essentially offer me like 100 grand the other day. Like, hey, with this up, I'm like, dude, I don't even need that right now. Like, if you gave it to me, I don't even know what I would do with it. Like, here's when I will know what I need it. Whenever I'm running specific ads at this and I'm getting this ROI, then I would have some kind of metric of like, hey, if I put an extra 100 grand at this would be the result, and I'll give you this piece of that. Exactly. Right? So now you got something to take to. So that's been the biggest thing. I mean, after playing golf for 3 years, the third time around on money, I mean, I've probably filled out 100 job applications, went on all these interviews, couldn't get a job. It wasn't because I didn't have the skills, it's because I didn't speak the language, right? So I didn't understand how my skills applied to what they were hiring for. I've since since learned that.
And how to sell yourself, maybe.
How to sell yourself. And honestly, like getting turned down for all those jobs, looking back, is the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to like really like self-assess where I was and go get those skills. So I like found that MBA program. Like I applied for the MBA program, like the San Antonio Police Department. And I was like, well, whichever one takes me first, I'm going to go do that. And they were like, well, we can get you in the academy in January. And this is like September. I'm like, dude, I can't wait like 3 months.
Yeah.
And the MBA program's like, we actually started the course 2 weeks ago. So it'd be like a year before you can start. And I was like, all right, let me get the freaking whoever's in charge of it. I was like, look, just let me in. I'll catch up.
Yeah.
I will outwork everyone there. I'll do whatever it takes. And they're like, okay, all right, let's see what you got. And I ended up being, valedictorian.
Yeah.
Because I outworked everybody else.
Yeah.
Like lots of smart people there. So, I mean, that's it. I mean, that investing in myself there, kind of getting those skills, then doing a couple startups, like learning how to do, build a sales team, build a sales funnel, like do all these things that you need. Like now that I'm building my own business, like, I learned how to do it like hypothetically in business school. And like, here's what you need to look at. And then I had 2 startups where I went and actually did it. So now that I'm doing it for myself, it's like those little things that like
experience
other people are getting tied up on. Like, I don't even have to think like, you've got to put some thought into it and do it. But as far as like, oh, here's what I need to build, like I've already built it before. Yeah. Right. So, whatever people are doing, like think of like the skills you're gaining in this job you're at now are going to help you to do your own thing. So if you can go get paid to learn in the job you're at, like learn everything you can, then when you go do your own thing, like you already have those skills.
Exactly.
So I've been able to, there's other people in that coaching program that I'm in, and like it became readily apparent to me after I started this, like how valuable those skills were. So just other people were like, oh, how do you do this audience building thing? And I started you've seen how fast my audience has been growing. Granted, like you have to give people actual value, but you have to have like the back end system to be able to manage leads coming in and do
exactly.
So that's, invest in yourself, and go in there like that way you can actually build some actual skills where you can start making real money.
Exactly.
And then you could actually look at like investing.
It's crazy that people think, for example, $1,000 for a course is a lot of money, but then they would go the extra mile to buy the fanciest car that they think they can afford, even though they don't, right?
Yeah. Which I've definitely bought a lot of dumb stuff in my life. You go through, you're a kid, you make it through, buds, you're a SEAL, and you've gone from like nothing to like, man, I'm like making a lot lot of money now.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, oh, let me get this motorcycle. Let me get this freaking Camaro, right?
Exactly.
Like all these things. And I mean, I've spent, if you include like my MBA and all that, I mean, I've spent $50,000, $60,000 on investing in myself and the skills that I need.
Wow.
Right. And like Chris, you're like, okay, like, dang, we spent a lot of money on this, but I was like, you know what? This is the best money we've ever spent. Cause you're right. People won't think twice about like, oh, let me go buy a Starbucks coffee for $5. You do that every day. Like that adds up. That's a lot of money. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't have the money to get started on doing something. And I think it goes back to that mindset of like, okay, what can I do to make this happen? Like even now, like, we're like, okay, let's see, what can we sell around here to make some extra money? Like I freaking do woodworking. So I might make some stuff and I sell those and they're expensive, but it's like very time consuming.
Yeah.
Like I'm still not making that much money when you think about the time that goes into it.
Exactly.
But it might give me that money that I need to run the ads to do this other thing. Right? Or you're like, oh, it's laying around. You know what? Maybe I don't need a dining room table right now. Let me get a few $100s on that to funnel into my business so that I can do it. Or, when I was playing golf, like we sold a year before I got out of the Navy, sold our house in Virginia. Christy moved back here with her parents. And I lived with a friend just so we could save all that money for a year.
Exactly.
Then we bought a house. Like we sold our house for, and this was a long time ago, so it was like a lot of money to us back then. Yeah. We sold it for like $350,000 and then bought a house for like $160,000.
Yeah.
So like our mortgage was like, our bills were $3,000 a month.
Exactly.
Like we're like, you know what? I have internet on my phone. I don't need it at the house too.
Exactly.
Right? So there's times where like, if you want something bad enough, like you'll sacrifice to do.
Goes back to your why and to purpose maybe even, right?
Yeah.
Which actually leads us smoothly in the next question. The questions that are going to come are a little spicier. What is your purpose in life, Chad?
Well, I think it's all like comes down to like being who God called you to be. Big part of it. So, I think I definitely have gifts to like I can see how things work together pretty well. And then I'm good at executing like a system. So I think I'm good at that. I can help other people learn that. And then I think eventually like our purpose, if I can make enough money, I'd like to use that to help. So like we're going on a mission trip here the end of the month. But I think there's a lot of people that, definitely need help. And I think like entrepreneurship, like for-profit business is the best way to help people, right? Because
agree,
right? Because if you look at all kinds of struggling countries, and their number one turnaround has been when somebody brought entrepreneurship to that area, right? Now you had people working, making money. Like you look at, I've seen it firsthand, some of these big NGOs like World Food Program and UNICEF and places like that who go in there and essentially just give them food, and they kill the incentive to work. And then within a generation, no one knows how to farm, right? So I think a lot of people there have like really good intentions, and they're generally like good people and they care about stuff. But I think behind the scenes, I think that is a plan to make those countries like dependent on someone else so that someone else can go take their natural resources. But that's my own opinion. And when you look at the problem with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of good nonprofits out there, but the problem is for them to like sustain what they're doing, they rely on other people giving them money, which is great, but it is relying on these external factors to make it happen. If you have a for-profit business that has, a good customer base, this thing is profitable and making money, like that thing can like be generous and help people like indefinitely.
Exactly. Nice. What happens to us after we die?
Depends on what you believe.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, personally, I believe if you have Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, then you're going to go to heaven. If not, then you won't.
Thank you. What is your take, Chad, on pornography?
I think it's a huge problem in America. I don't know. I think it's kind of I don't know what the word is. Like it used to be like, if you wanted pornography, like you'd have to go to the store and buy it, right?
Yeah, buy it,
Buy it, go in there and actually do it, so that probably like kept a lot of people doing it. Now it's like
easily accessible.
It's easily, like you could not even be trying to look at it and it's freaking
pops on your phone.
It pops on your phone, right? So it's like just in your face, like all the time.
How do you think it affects, or does it affect men or young men, or not even young men in general? Like, because you were talking a lot about your why, we were talking about purpose, and how do you think it influences those things and your motivation as well?
Well, I think I read a study on this a few weeks ago, and again, I'm not a scientist, but I think social media in general, but specifically that, like you get these huge dopamine hits, right? And that's why it like can become addicting, and it can leave you like where you're not motivated to do other stuff. I think it also kind of changes your like perspective on reality, and what that is. So I think the more stuff we like, bad stuff we shove in our minds, like the more bad stuff comes out. So, I mean, I think we could all do a better job of, kind of guarding like what we're letting go in, whether it's pornography, mindless social media, the stuff we're watching on TV. I mean, let's be honest, like most TV shows are just as bad, right? Yeah. The news, right? It's, is this stuff actually helping propel me forward?
It's junk food for the mind, basically.
Yeah. So,
What do you think about Andrew Tate? Everyone's talking.
Yeah, I honestly don't know that much about him. I know like my kids have sent me different posts or stuff he makes. But honestly, like I don't even know enough about the guy to like give you an honest assessment. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, even like with Fernando, he was like, because I was saying, it said like the other day, I was like, dude, it starts with your why, and he's like, maybe you should come up with a different word for that, because a lot of like motivational speakers use that. I was like, interesting. Like I've never listened to a motivational speaker. So I don't know. What's your take on Andrew Tate?
Well, it's my interview. You have to answer, so not me. I actually have a video about that.
Okay.
Yeah. And the bonus one, what's your opinion on David Goggins? I bet you know more about David Goggins than you do. Maybe you even read his book.
I haven't read any of his books. I have several opinions. I'll just share the positive ones. Is that fair?
For sure.
So I'd say as a, former, military member, like I'd say he's probably the best marketer to ever come out of the military, right? As far as, regardless like what he did in the SEAL teams, what it was there, but as far as like building a brand, building an audience, and having a successful like business off of that, the dude is brilliant on that.
What about Jocko though?
Jocko?
Yeah.
I don't know Jocko personally. Like I know Leif, like he trained jiu-jitsu at the other gym I was going to. Like Jocko, I don't know him personally. I know he has super good relationship.
But I mean, from a marketing standpoint, because
from a marketing standpoint,
he's brilliant as well.
Oh yeah, it's good. I mean, we've got all his Warrior Kid books. Like my freaking writer loves them. Like I read them to him, and they're freaking pretty good. I was like, maybe I need a kids book series after my book. But I mean, they're good. I mean, I've listened to some of his stuff, and I mean, I agree with most of the stuff that he says. I mean, I'd say most of the stuff like David Goggins says, like I agree on some level. I don't necessarily agree with you know, hey, you just need to go do hard stuff all the time. I think that's unrealistic, right? You know, it comes back to,
but it's catchy.
It's catchy, but it, like, you can't execute on that, right? If I just tell you, like, hey, just go do something hard every day, right? Let's say if I was like, Alex, all right, you want to be tough? Like, all right, I want you to go run 50 miles. And so you're like, okay, like, you're like, okay, I believe Chad. So you go run 50 miles.
Yeah.
What did you accomplish?
Not much.
Not much. So if your sole goal, now, if you want to be a champion ultra marathon runner, and that's your thing, you're going to need to run 50 miles like a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're just doing it to prove, like, to other people or to yourself that you can do it, then after the first time you do it, like, your motivation to do it again is gone.
Yeah. Even that, what's the point of it?
But what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to do something hard, like, have a reason for doing it. Don't just randomly go like, oh, I just want to go lay in cold water to show that I can. Like, after boot camp, like, I went to A school and then I went to Buds, right? And at A school, there was a bunch of guys who were going to Buds, and they would get up at like 4 a.m. and go work out and jump, like, surf torture themselves, and which surf torture is like where you go lay in the ocean and just like freeze yourself and then you get out, right? Yeah. So I went, like, the first day I was there, I got up, went and ran with these guys, and they all are like going to lay in the water. I'm like, what do y'all do? They're like, oh, we're freaking getting ready for Buds. We're going to surf torture ourselves. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, you guys are idiots. So they're like laying in the water. I went back to bed, right? I went and got in my bed, because you know why? That doesn't count. Nobody cares if you surf tortured yourself before you went to Buds. All those guys quit.
Really?
Every single one of them. Because here's the difference. You can go get an ice bath and you can lay in there, and you can probably sit in there longer than I would, because I'll get out, because I have no reason to be in there other than, like, okay, if this is going to help me recover, like, maybe I'll sit in there. But you could go in there and sit in an ice bath, and maybe you could sit in there for 5 minutes, right? And then you get out. And, like, psychologically, like, you can do it. What if, like, what is it you want most? Like, you want your business to blow up and do all that? Yeah. If I said, okay, Alex, you're going to go in there and you're going to stay in that ice bath, and you can't get out until I tell you can get out. Now, if it's just for, like, being in the water and you didn't want it that bad, you're going to be like, screw that, I'm getting out right now.
Exactly.
But if it's like, hey, if this happens, as soon as you get out, like, your business is going to freaking 100x tomorrow. You'll stay in that thing all day.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's essentially it, right? You can't.
But doesn't that prepare you for that day when it actually matters? Because I can see where they're coming from. Those guys that they would self-torture themselves, is like maybe hurt themselves physically, even mentally, I mean,
I don't think you can prepare yourself for being cold. Like, I'm not saying, like, don't run, don't be in shape, don't do things like that. Like, you're going to have to do those things. But being cold is a mental thing. And honestly, like, the more you get cold, the faster you get cold, right? So you're actually making it where you get colder faster. I mean, everybody's going to be cold. But it's the same with, like, if you were to go give yourself heat stroke, once you get heat stroke once, like, you're more likely to get it, because it does something with your, like, hypothalamus, where it, like, kills your ability to regulate your temperature.
Is it the same with getting choked out? John was saying that.
Yeah, you don't want to get choked out.
You don't want to get choked out.
No, you won't.
Because then the second time.
You're more, it's easier to tap. Now, it probably, like, recovers after some time. But yeah, I mean, just going and, I mean, have a reason to do something. If you have the reason, then you'll push through those hard things. Now, if I say this as somebody who, like I train jiu-jitsu every day, I work out, like, I do hard things all the time.
Of course.
Right? Now, where I could see, like, what David Goggins applies, if all you do is sit around and watch TV and eat junk food, then you need to freaking get out. Like, get off your ass and go do some time. But that's going back to, like, hey, go do the workout. Like, you want to get fit, like, have a reason to do it. Don't just, like, go from nothing to, like, oh, I'm going to go run 50 miles, because now you're going to break yourself. Then you're going to be laid up for a year, and you're going to be right back to where you were before. Exactly. So you have to do it in a system where you can actually, like, maintain consistency. You have
to do it, basically, maybe the word is intelligently. Yeah. Right.
You have to be smart. But, don't use that as an excuse to not do anything.
Yeah. Work hard, but work smart at the same time.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. That was the last question for me.
All right.
Thanks so much, Chad. And now, please let the people know where they could find you, how they can reach out to you. And we're going to plug all the things in the description.
All right, so you could find me at my website is mentaltoughnessandconfidence.com, all spelled out. You could find me on, Instagram. I just started a TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Just Chad Metcalf. My Instagram and Twitter and TikTok are all at Chad __ Metcalf.
All right, there you have it, warriors. You can find all the relevant links from Chad. I'm going to link them in the description. See you next time.